We started looking through the plan when we began this process, and what we noticed is that a lot of the things that could be achieved in that plan had been achieved. And then we also noticed that there's topics that have emerged since that plan was adopted that weren't real topics back then. For example, sustainability. In that plan, it looks at just talking about environmental initiatives. And the sustainability movement has really shifted since then, and so now we've kind of embraced looking at it from a more inclusive, triple bottom line standpoint, and so that's been really beneficial. But we also want to make sure that this new plan includes some of those changes. The technology has changed. There's very little discussion, if any, about the need for us all to be connected together. Wi-Fi, if it existed when that plan was written, was very inaccessible in Athens. Smartphones, things like that, and how we utilize those things to communicate and to get information have completely changed since that plan. And so those are things we'll be looking at in this plan too. And if you look at some of the land use plans, I mean, we're talking about autonomous vehicles nationwide now. That wasn't even on the radar when that plan was created. And the needs for things like to have a lot more facilities and amenities that support people who don't want to drive a car. Looking at sidewalks, looking at our bicycle and pedestrian, or looking at bike and pedestrian mobility, and looking at mobility in general for people who may not have the ability to drive a car or don't have the resources to afford a car. Somebody who may have special needs or a disability that makes it difficult for them to drive. We want to create ways for them to better get around Athens as well. And so those will be things we'll be looking at in this plan. When we did that last plan, the city worked with a consulting firm out of Toledo who was on retainer to do this project, or that project. This plan we are doing almost exclusively in-house, utilizing my time as a staff member of the city, and we have a few interns that are really been wonderful for us. And then we're relying a lot on public input to help drive this plan. We have an advisory committee that's been a resource. And then a lot of this is just getting people to have meetings, getting people to answer questions, to talk to us, to better understand this city as a whole, and it's been a really great experience.
Logue also discussed some unresolved issues from the previous comprehensive plan.
There's a lot of problems. To me, I look at them as they're kind of evergreen problems, and that would be the same for Athens as it would be for like any other city. Now the problems might be different, but there are these things that are very difficult to affect change on. The condition of our neighborhoods would be one. I do think Athens, I think our neighborhoods look a lot better today than they did at least 10, 15 years ago, but I think there's a lot more work we can do. We haven't gone as far as we should have. Looking at some of the recommendations with like historic preservation, we're taking some baby steps towards getting historic preservation guidelines or regulations adopted by the city, and our Preservation Commission has been really beneficial for that. And we still have a lot of, what we've heard from a lot of constituents is challenges with the negative impacts of off-campus student housing. Although we've done a better job with some of the new housing developments of providing better housing for students. We also hear from students that the housing is really expensive. We don't have a lot of housing for people of a middle income range available in Athens, and that's been a real challenge. And we don't have a lot of supportive housing for people of low to moderate incomes, as well as people, seniors, and people with disabilities. There's not as much accessible housing in Athens. So those are things that were all in that plan that we haven't really solved yet, and those will be things that are going to be in this new plan. I think we've got some better ideas now. We've got some better tools that we can work with. The city has an Affordable Housing Commission that was created earlier this year that's helped to move it forward. The city and the university had a task force back in 2017 that gave a report. And so I think we've got better understanding of the issue, and we also have identified better solutions. And so I'm hoping that we have some opportunity there. Yeah. And there was a lot of zoning changes that were recommended in the plan, and those never got, none of those really ever got changed, and some subdivision regulations to give a little bit more flexibility with the type of housing stock that we have in Athens. A lot of our housing in Athens is either, the zoning requirements are built for single-family detached residential or for multi-unit apartment rental. And there's no in between. There's very little opportunity for, say, townhouse or condominium style homes, or something where there's not a very large yard, or where a lot of people don't want to manage a lot of real estate. And so some of those changes, although we identified them, haven't happened yet. And I think, like I said, we've got some better tools now that we can to make recommendations to hopefully get those changes to happen. We always try to make a really good effort to listen. The goal of a plan is to get consensus on topics, and that doesn't mean exactly what I want, or exactly what you want, or exactly what anybody else wants. It's basically saying, these are the issues that we heard about in our community, these are the issues that we're trying to solve. And so we need to find a way to try to solve these issues and basically say, these are things that we can all live with. It might not be exactly what what one person wants or exactly what another person wants, but it's basically saying this is stuff that makes sense for us to do if we're looking at it from a community aspect. One thing about that we've really done with this plan, to change subject briefly, that I feel like I'm really happy with and excited about, is that we made a very conscious effort in this plan to get input from Ohio University students. And we didn't do that very well with our previous planning process. And so with this process, we did specific student engagement. We had meetings on campus. We did pop-up where we set up a table in front of the college, or in front of the Athens County Courthouse, and tried to catch students as they were walking by during the day to give us information. We had some interactive maps for them to better understand what they think are problems in Athens. And then we also did we set up a table on campus in one of the academic buildings to catch students as they were coming to and from class, so we could talk to them, engage with them about the plan, better understand their experience in Athens, the challenges they have in Athens, and some of their thoughts for the way Athens could be a better place. So that's been really exciting to me. And the other thing we really focused on for this plan was working closely with our Disabilities Commission to better understand their needs as it relates to housing and transit and getting in and out of buildings and accessibility. And we're also being very mindful of how we can better make the city work for people on the autism spectrum, which is a very new and emerging aspect of city planning. And so we've been doing some workshops with people on the spectrum and some of their parents and caregivers to better understand that experience, and then getting some recommendations for things we can build in to the plan.